about this company that manufactures computer chips. They're saying that they find 8% of all their chips manufactured are defective. That isn't very good, right? I'm not sure how this company is still in existence. Okay, so management is concerned that employees are essentially partially responsible for this rate. Come on, employees. Typical employees. In an effort to decrease this percentage, right, because, man, that's not very good, they decide to offer an incentive program. Yay! All right, so for 1 month, they're going to institute this incentive program. If it's successful, they'll continue it, right? So if they are able to see the rate of defective chips decrease, they're going to keep going. All right, everybody good? All right, let's write some hypotheses. Right now, what do we think is the best idea for the rate of defective chips?
0.08.
Very good. If you wanted to write 8%, it is totally fine to write 8%. All right, but a couple of you forgot. Make sure you put P equals, right? P equals. All right, what are we hoping to prove? That's our alternative. What are we hoping to prove? Very good, that we've decreased it. All right, so remember, the alternative is what you're hoping to prove. Okay, so the very first question, that's the first one. The very first one that you don't know right here is essentially what is a type 1 error? So in your brain, try to do it. Now, should I say what my brain was thinking? Right? That's rejecting the null. So we're saying it's not 8%. And in fact, what is it? It's less than. But if we commit a type 1 error, it's actually still 8%. All right, so I'm going to write that out. So thinking it is less than 8% when, in fact, it's still. That sounded like you were like unsheathing your sword. 8%. Did anyone think that? I was like, shh. Okay. Now I know that I didn't write rejecting the null hypothesis in favor of the alternative when in fact you shouldn't have, right? But that's essentially now in context of this problem. What would be an impact with this company, right? So we think that it's less than 8%, but it actually isn't. It's still 8%. So what's going to be that impact? Ooh, interesting, right? Or what's another one? We think what's happening with our program. We actually think it's what? We think it's working.
But it's not.
We think it's working, right? We think it's lower than 8, but is it working?
No.
It's not working. So we think the program, the incentive program, is working, but it's not. And you're right, Diana, that might mean that it actually has nothing to do with the employees. All right, so essentially, biggest takeaway here, if this is a company, is you're wasting your money. You're giving employees these incentives, whatever it is, something probably money related, right? And it's not actually doing anything to help the goal of your company, which I assume is to make better chips.
But it's helping the working class, and I think that's good.
Fair enough, right? It's a different class. All right, let's do number 3, type 2 error. So in your brain, try to think what would be a type 2 error. When everyone to try in their brain. Or do a lot of that on the AP exam roll, and then you'll get a 5 for sure. Okay, Thomas, you got something?
We think it's still 8% when in fact it is less than 8%.
That is correct. So we think it's still 8%, but in fact, it's less than 8%. So kind of the opposite effect of what's going on here, right? What's the company going to do if we think it's still 8% after this 1 month? They're going to stop. I want to be careful with the word destroy. We're going to stop the program, right? The incentive program is not working. But in fact, it is working. All right, so the company will stop the program, I would assume, the incentive program. But it's working. So missing out on a chance to better their product. Essentially what's happening here. Any questions so far with the type 1 and the type 2? What helps in my brain, I'll just be honest with you guys. I mean, I'm doing this for a long time. I still do, when I get a question like this on the AP exam, I still do, all right, type 1 error, rejecting the null in favor of the alternative, when in fact it shouldn't. I still do that, all right? And it's okay if you got to do it. I'm just telling you, I still do that. It helps me sort it out. Okay, let's look at number 4. It says, based on the data they collected during this 1-month trial program, they found a 95% confidence interval for the percentage of defective chips was between 5% and 7%. The moment I read that, what is shouting out of my brain? When you look at that interval. When you look at that interval, what is like screaming at me? What, Estrella? Oh, there's just something about a number that I don't see that's screaming at me. I don't see 8. I don't see 8. I mean, 6 is right in the middle, Maria, right? 6 is in the middle. Right? I don't see 6, you're right. But what do I see is definitely not in that. 8, right? 8 is further to the right. So if we're making a confidence interval that doesn't include, right, 8, what should I do with it? Reject it, right? No, we're still working on that. That's fine, right? I don't see 8, right? 8 isn't in my interval, so I should reject 8. That's the first thing I'm going to do. In this number 4, that's them saying that we should reject 8. So we should reject 8%. And what does that say about this incentive program? And I'm going to say, and keep doing the incentive program. It's working. And somebody out there that's watching this, right? This may be your job. Maybe. You never know. Now, can I try to answer number 5? This is where the book would have you do a formula. But instead, I'm going to draw a little tiny baby curve. It's hard to do it when it's so small here, but I'll do a little tiny curve. All right. What level of confidence did they use for their confidence interval? 95%. Okay. I did that for number 4. It said they found a 95% confidence interval. Okay. So now here's what I do. Look at the alternative hypothesis. What symbol did I use? Less than. All right, so which tail am I, in theory, going to be shading? The lower tail. So down here, right? So remember, this is where you're going to copy and paste. So I got to copy and paste. So what can I copy and paste here and here to add up to 100%? Very good. I need to copy and paste 2.5%. Just made that up. 2.5% in both of these. So for the alpha level that they use, because we're just trying to shade in one of these tails, is 0.025. All right, so that's a little bit lower than what we are most likely going to be using on all of our tests of 0.05. Now, what if this had been a 2-tail test?
Then we include both.
Then you have to include both of them. All right. It'll be 0.05 exactly. All right. Let's do 6. All right. So remember, what did we say our alpha was? 0.025. Now number 6 is saying let's lower it. All right. So instead of that, let's use 0.01. All right. So what's an advantage? Eduardo's kind of go what you were saying earlier. What happens to the likelihood of us committing a type 1 error? It's less likely. So your type 1 error will decrease. And I'll give you some context here, guys. So what this means is when you reject the null in favor of the alternative, you're more confident that you made the right choice. All right, so if your type 1 error decreases, when you reject the null, you can be more confident you did the right thing. But what's the flip side of that? The type 2 error goes up. So our likelihood of failing to reject 8%, when in fact we should have, has now gone up. Okay? So again, there's always that give and take. All right. Management decides to extend the incentive program. So instead of 1 month, they're going to do this for 3 months. All right. So what does that tell me if instead of doing just 1 month of data, now I'm going to essentially triple that? That's a larger sample size. What up, Diana? That's awesome. That's what I like to hear, right? Because a larger sample size is going to mean what about our errors? They're both going to decrease. They're both going to go down. The rate of us doing that, something wrong, is going to go down. That's awesome. So if the power of a test is the ability to reject null hypotheses that are false, right? So it's like doing the right thing, right? It's going to go up. The increasing the sample size will always help your power. So increasing the sample size will always increase the power of your test. Do you want to see some math for this?
Do we need to see the math?
No, but some people might want to see math. So
Okay, well then, let's see the math.
okay, I'll show you. I'll make up some math. Well, I mean, that's what I'm doing here. Okay, so just for argument's sake, let's say our beta, this is just, you don't need to write this down if you don't want to. I'll change colors so you know you don't have to. All right, so for argument's sake, let's say this beta is 0.78. All right, then what did we do to our alpha? We decreased it, so what happened to our beta? It increased. So let's say it went 0.82. Okay? So now what's happening in this one where we increase the sample size? What's happening to our beta? It goes down. Oh my gosh, 0.7. All right? The power of a test is 1 minus beta. You do not need to know how to calculate it. So this is going to be 0.3. All right? What was the power of test for this one?
0.22.
Not 0.3, right? For this one?
0.18.
Not 0.3. So what happened to it? The best power of our test was for the increase of the sample size. Okay? Again, Thomas, you're right. No math needed. Let's do the last one. Over the trial month, 6% of the computer chips manufactured were defective. Management decides that the decrease was significant. Awesome. Why might they not want to permanently continue the incentive program?
It might be too expensive.
That's exactly right, Thomas. Amazing. So as the statistician in the room, you're saying that it is statistically significant and you should keep doing it. But from the corporate side, they're like, okay, we hear that, but it's too much money. We're not going to do it. Our profit margin is still good enough with our crummy 8% defective rate. All right, so say it one more time, Maria.
That's such a corporate decision. Is this the only answer, or can you take a different route?
You can absolutely take a different route. You got one?
No, I'm not ideas.
Then you're good. This is the only one.
Is that your one?
Say it again. The economy crash? Absolutely. I always usually